Welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show, sponsored by Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals. Visit legacypminvestments.com. That's legacypminvestments.com.
Welcome to Jenna Ellis Tonight. I'm your guest host, Ryan Helfenbein. On Sunday at the U.S. Capitol, there was a ceremony at the National Statuary Hall to commemorate the unveiling of a new statue, North Carolina's favorite son, Billy Graham. The bronze statue features the evangelist standing with his Bible open to the book of Galatians with his right hand turned up with the palm open. On the left side of the statue is the scripture, John 14:6, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And on the right side of the statue, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Let's play the clip.
Our family is honored that our earthly father will be here in this Capitol, pointing to future generations to our Heavenly Father.
Today, North Carolina gives the nation a symbol representing one of our dearest treasures, the Reverend Billy Graham.
And it's North Carolina's honor to be able to call him our native son.
And it is altogether fitting that he should take his place among the greatest Americans here in the Statuary Hall.
Literally, millions of people will walk by and read John 14:6 right there.
Joining me now is Walker Wildmon. He's Vice President of American Family Association. Walker, welcome to the Jenna Ellis Show.
Hey, Ryan, good to be on with you.
Well, I'm honored to be joined with you, and of course, Billy Graham is being honored and recognized by North Carolina. The former governor, his statue was replaced. Longtime governor of North Carolina, Franklin Graham, said on Sunday his father would be uncomfortable with this recognition, this attention that's drawn to him. He'd want the attention to go to the one his father served, and that was the Lord Jesus Christ. He would want all the attention to go to him. What's your reaction to this? I think there's a lot of negative news that we often see around the nation, around the world. This is a bright spot, don't you think?
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's not surprising at all that Billy Graham's statue was placed in Statuary Hall in the Congress building there in the House of Representatives between the both chambers. This is a very prominent thing to be placed in this hall. I mean, some of America's foremost leaders from various states around the country are placed in this hall. So Billy Graham, though, was a significant figure in the spiritual well-being of America. I mean, whose life hasn't been impacted by Billy Graham, whether it be an extended family member or a friend or a neighbor. I mean, virtually anybody who's been around the last 30 or 40 years knows someone whose life was positively impacted by the gospel of Jesus Christ through the life of Billy Graham. And even my grandfather, Don Wildmon, well before he started American Family Association, he went to a Billy Graham crusade, a Billy Graham event in Memphis, Tennessee, and his life was impacted in a big way by just attending that evangelistic event. So Billy Graham touched and impacted millions of lives, not just in America, but around the country, around the world, rather. And he counseled presidents, multiple presidents received the wise, godly counsel of Billy Graham. So this is an excellent thing for the Graham family, and 100% expected. I mean, this is, if anybody is due to be in the hall, it's Billy Graham. So amazing testimony there. But yeah, you're always going to have naysayers. But you know, when you look about the land of America and our history, it's been Christian leaders that have rose to prominence and had the most positive impact on our nation. I mean, when was the last time you saw an atheist that was placed in statuary hall because of their positive impact on millions of Americans. It just hasn't happened. The gospel and the Christian faith leads us to serve others and to look out for the best interest of others. And that's how you receive a maximum impact in our land. And so it's no question and no doubt that Billy Graham's life displays just that.
I couldn't agree with you more, Walker. So well said, by the way. And in that, in some of that B-roll footage we just saw, he was right next to Davy Crockett. By the way, I'm a Texan, proud Texan, and the fact that he's being honored with so many other iconic figures in American history, certainly calling the nation to repentance, to faith in Jesus Christ, forming the moral conscience of the nation during modern times, and in a time in which we were at a Cold War with the Soviet Union. And you just think about, you just named it, atheism. Well, that was kind of the hallmark, belief of communism, and still is, right? By the way, there have been those who have been naysayers, as you pointed to, those on the left. The Freedom from Religion Foundation co-president Dan Barker said, as our nation faces unparalleled threats to our secular democracy, it's unfortunate to see the personification of white Christian nationalism given such an honored perch inside the seat of our democracy. Why is the left so angered, do you think, Walker, by this statue? Why do you think that they're so enraged, even in a moment where you would say, hey, this is something many Americans are happy to see? They may not all share the same faith as Billy Graham, but they certainly recognize that he was good for our country.
Yeah, when I hear the rage of the left and the God haters, it's quite humorous. I almost wanted to laugh out loud there. But when you look at America, number one, not only are all their characterizations and accusations blatantly false, but the Christian faith and Billy Graham himself have had a tremendous positive impact on our nation. I mean, after all, we are a Christian nation. That is undeniable. You look at our founding documents, you look at the Protestants who sailed over to start the colonies, look at our founding fathers and their testimonies and the Federalist Papers, and every single fingerprint on America's founding is rooted in Christian values. I mean, the Bible, they talked about our Creator and how we're endowed with certain inalienable rights. So we can't whitewash this. We can't rid our history of this. And if we continue to reject it, though, in our nation's future, it will lead to our demise. When you root out freedom, we will go down as a nation.
I wholeheartedly agree. This nation was formed in the pulpit, and I think it's going to take the pulpit to save America. Walker, thank you so much for joining Jenna Ellis tonight. Folks, stick around. We'll be right back.
Hi friends, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis Tonight, and we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an utter disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a constant issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, and those have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. So there are so many reasons that Americans should consider wise investing, and investments in gold and silver, and Legacy Precious Metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com, download the free investor guide, and I have read it. There is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is the time to not roll the dice on your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that is in gold and that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals and make sure to tell them that I sent you.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis Tonight. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court announced Monday the organization is seeking arrest warrants for some top leaders of Israel and Hamas. The prosecutor, Kiram Khan, accused Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, along with 3 leaders of the Hamas terrorist organization, of war crimes against humanity. Netanyahu slammed the move as anti-Semitic, and even President Biden lambasted the prosecutor, saying Israel has the right to defend itself. Joining me again is Walker Wildmon. He's the vice president of American Family Association. Walker, to me, this seems like a horrible insult to the nation of Israel, equivocating Israel defending itself for the actions committed on October the 7th, Hamas. This is outrageous. What do you say?
Yeah, the fundamentals of this quote unquote charge by a court that has no jurisdiction, ironically, is it's just that it's built on lies, it's built on faulty thinking. The reality is that between Israel and Hamas, they are not co-equals. The moral equivalency here just doesn't exist. I mean, to say that these are 2 co-equal entities or nations or states or parties is patently absurd. I mean, when you look back, the Jews have inherited and been given the land of Israel by God thousands of years ago, going back to the Old Testament and the early days of recorded scripture in the Bible. So you don't see in Genesis chapter 15 anything about Palestinians or Gazans. It's just not there. So the Jews have been in the land of Israel for thousands of years. This is a relatively modern conflict where we try to think that the Palestinians are owed a state or a nation in the region. And the majority of the region is Muslim, by the way. So it's not as if the Muslims are underrepresented here. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, the list goes on of Muslim majority nations. So it's not as if the Muslims are missing out here in the Middle East. They have multiple nations that they can flee to and take over, whatever they want to describe it as. But as far as the International Criminal Court, this is a problem with globalist type entities that claim to have jurisdiction, whether you're talking about the United Nations, the International Criminal Court, the World Health Organizations. When you talk about reality and the legal sphere, these entities have no jurisdiction. Quite literally, they have no jurisdiction. And here's why. Their jurisdiction is contingent upon relative actual nation states submitting to their jurisdiction. For example, Israel would have to submit to the International Criminal Court jurisdiction in order for this arrest warrant to have any type of plausible application. So this isn't a complete joke. It's really all for show, but it really shows the idiocy of the International Criminal Court.
Yeah, I totally wholeheartedly agree with you. There is no jurisdiction, as they're not a governing body that has any authority in the sovereign state of Israel. President Biden seems to think that this is ridiculous, and we obviously would agree. Do you think this will impact his support among young leftist voters? And I'm even thinking of Arab Americans in Dearborn, Michigan. That seems to be a voting demographic that he is absolutely concerned about in 2024, who they sympathize obviously with Hamas. Do you think that this will impact him in some way?
Well, it does appear that the Biden crew is very concerned about the pro-Hamas voting bloc in America, which I can't believe I'm even saying that. Like, is that really a voting bloc? But you're right, it actually is, because we've imported hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million Muslims into this nation, and we've imported them via immigration, some legal, some illegal, but they don't like America. They genuinely hate America, and they hate our Christian value system. Why we allowed them in, I have completely no idea. But on this International Criminal Court and Biden, Biden's all talk and no action. So he can act like he disagrees with the International Criminal Court, but in reality, what's he going to do about it? He's going to do squat, nothing, nada, zilch. The same thing like he did with inflation, nothing. He made it worse. So in reality, Biden is all talk and no action. And if he genuinely disliked and disagreed with the ICC on this issue, he would seek to punish them and sanction them and weld the power of the American purse on them. But he's not going to do that. He's just going to talk, and he's not going to do anything. And I think voters see through that.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that assessment. Looking at Israel, looking at the larger implications, what's happening right now on the ground there. There's Americans being held hostage right now. There's over 100 hostages still being held since October the 7th. Over 1,200 people were taken on that day. Lives were taken mercilessly by Hamas. Do you think any of this external pressure from the international community, even from the Biden administration, will have tangible impact on Israel and its leaders?
Yeah, I think America's weak leadership or lack thereof is hurting Israel. Now, it may not be hurting them physically or militarily, but it's hampering their ability to get the job done on Hamas. I mean, the fact that there are still hostages held is really just an unmitigated failure on behalf of the Biden administration. We're supposed to be the leaders. We're supposed to be the world's fixers, if you will, the greatest military and the most wealthy nation in the world. So the fact that we haven't closed the deal on Hamas and ended their reign in Gaza and other regions is really an embarrassment and a shame on America. So the implications and the negativity is not really on Netanyahu or Israel. It's on our lack of leadership here. We're letting Israel take the lead on this issue when really we should be standing right beside them. There's no reason that Israel should not move on Rafah, seal the deal with Hamas, make them no more, and have complete security control of the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, you know, America has traditionally two very strong allies. Certainly, when you think about the United Kingdom historically, and then certainly all the things that had happened since 1948 until today, the state of Israel. If we turn our back on those alliances, those key allegiances and promises that we've given, what are we as a nation anyway? Just final
Mm.
question as we kind of lead out here, Walker, for those who are Christians and are watching, how you know how can they think about this? How can they even pray about this? What is the best way? What is the best outlook upon news and information like this today? We got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one thing. Israel is our greatest ally in the Middle East, and it's important to support them, not just from a foreign policy standpoint, but from a biblical standpoint as well. We're to support the nation of Israel, and if there's any nation in the world, whether it be Ukraine, Russia, whatever, that we should support or Israel, it has to be Israel. There is moral significance in supporting Israel.
Thank you. Well said. Thank you for joining us, folks. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Well, friends, you might have heard that Mike Lindell and MyPillow no longer have the support of their box stores or shopping channels the way that they used to. They've been part of this cancel culture, so they want to pass along the savings directly to you by having a $25 extravaganza. I love that word, extravaganza. When Mike started MyPillow, it was just a one-product company. With the help of his dedicated employees, they now have hundreds of products, some you may not even know about. To get the word out, I want to invite my listeners to check out their $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use My Pillows are just $25. My Pillow sandals, also awesome, only $25. Their 6-pack towel sets are $25. And brand new 4-pack dish towels, you guessed it, just $25. For the first time ever, the premium My Pillows with the all-new Giza fabric, just $25. And orders over $75 will receive free shipping too. This amazing offer won't last long. Go to mypillow.com, use the promo code Jenna, or call 800-564-8475 today. That's 800-564-8475, or go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Jenna.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis Tonight. I'm your guest host, Ryan Helfenbein. The madness of the Trump trials continues. And the latest development, Michael Cohen, President Trump's former lawyer, admitted to stealing $60,000 from his ex-boss, saying the theft was a form of self-help. Joining me to discuss is Ron Coleman, conservative commentator, attorney, and host of Coleman Nation. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I just look at the insanity right now. When you think about our legal system, they're making an absolute mockery of our courts. We have a kangaroo courts. We have show trials. This is the real cost to our justice system over time. Even Hollywood producer director Oliver Stone says that this is a form of legal warfare. He's calling it lawfare. This is petty. It's ridiculous. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the fact that people such as he and Bill Mayer and other relative skeptics on the left are feeling comfortable saying this kind of thing shows you just how far it's gone. And I've said many times, the damage here isn't just to Donald Trump or any particular person or party. It is to the system. And as long as you're willing to find, as long as you're able to find, and you always will be, people like Michael Cohen, whose virtue is entirely negotiable, you will always be able to find someone to give you the testimony you need to convict anyone of anything, or in this case, of nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And when you think about all of the ways in which justice is being perverted, there seems to be there are 4 trials right now that the president has been a part of. When you think about the cost long term, the fact that if they can go after the former president in this way, so publicly, so blatantly obvious, so brazenly, in broad daylight, if they can legally mug somebody of that stature, what does that mean for anyone like you or me, any average Joe American, Joe Lunchbox, somebody who, drives a truck for a living, someone who, is a plumber, a welder? You think about all these guys, normal, average, everyday people, ordinary citizens, law abiding. But if they can go after the former president in this way, in such petty ways, what does that mean for everybody else?
It doesn't mean anything good. Just ask anyone who is in prison because they decided to go see what's going on at the United States Capitol on January 6th. And in between the regular lunch bucket guys like you and me are the people who are not quite Donald Trump, but who have a lot of say in how money is spent and invested in places like New York City. So much so that Governor Hochul of New York, a real non-entity of a hack, felt compelled to say about a month ago to real estate investors, hey, don't worry, we're only doing this to Donald Trump. We won't do this to any of you. Are you nuts?
Yeah. No, I wholeheartedly agree. If they can do that to him, they could do that to literally anyone. The average American who's watching this right now, do you think that most Americans, and I'm not just talking about people down, in Alabama and Mississippi and Florida, but I'm thinking about places in Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, right? Down in Arizona. Do you think Americans are seeing through these schemes, these trials, these shenanigans? Do you think it will have impact long term, maybe even in November?
I think it will. There's no one who is impressed by what is supposedly being hung on Donald Trump, who wasn't already absolutely in the tank for Donald Trump, not just a month ago or 3 months ago, but 3 years ago. Anyone who's has even the remotest shred of undecidedness or objectivity could possibly fail to see it. There have definitely been people whose votes have moved from the undecided or boycotting the election because of a lack of appreciation for the choices to making protest votes for Donald Trump. Yes, a lot of normal people. Are they the people that Joe Biden's trying to impress in Minnesota and Michigan? I wouldn't in a million years be able to guess what people like that think about anything. The way their minds work is quite foreign to me.
Yeah. Well, that's an honest assessment. Listen, so Trump is planning to hold a rally in South Bronx. This will be actually on Thursday night. Now, this is going on, just down the street, if you will. I don't know exactly where the geographic point of reference is, but not too far in a similar part, right? So do you think that this is going to energize supporters in New York? Do you think folks are going to turn out? Do you think this rally will be big?
It will energize supporters in New York. Folks will turn out. but it will not have an effect on the vote in New York City, because the vote in New York City, just like the vote in every other major blue city, has nothing to do with how people vote. I'm not one of those black pill guys who says no matter what we do, nothing matters because the vote is crooked. But in these cities, the vote is crooked and nothing matters. In these precincts, the vote is crooked, but nothing matters. But the way this South Bronx rally plays, not only in upstate New York, but in Michigan and in Alabama, well, Alabama wasn't really in play, but in swing states and other places where the votes do matter and there isn't a gigantic crooked urban machine managing the voting, that's what this is. This is a stage for Donald Trump to make some very powerful points and also to demonstrate just how disconnected and Biden and the Democrats have become from the concerns of urban voters.
Yeah. I think that is a great point that you just made. I'm reminded back in 2001 when 9/11 happened, the nation kind of, coming together, rallying together. I'll never forget former President George W. Bush throwing a pitch at Yankee Stadium. Yeah, it was for New York. Yeah, it was for the Yankees, but it was a national stage for the rest of the country. So what is happening is not just for what's happening in South Bronx, but the rest of the nation could be energized by what they're seeing. Just final thoughts as we go out into our break.
God runs the world. That's just ultimately there isn't a straight path to resolution other than the fact that good actually wins a lot more than people appreciate. When you're in the moment, it's hard to appreciate it, but it's going to happen.
That's the great thought to end on, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the Jenna Ellis Tonight Show. We'll be right back.
Hi friends, Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis Tonight, and we are experiencing instability at every level. Our government lacks leadership, and Bidenomics has been an utter disaster. The economy is in a fragile state. Inflation has been a constant issue. High interest rates have put significant pressure on the real estate market. There have been major bank failures, and many analysts say a stock market correction is likely overdue. We have global conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, and those have the potential to spread, but gold has soared to record highs even among the tensions. So there are so many reasons that Americans should consider wise investing, and investments in gold and silver, and legacy precious metals is the gold standard. I love Legacy Precious Metals because of their zero hassle, education first approach. They can help you roll your traditional IRA into a gold IRA or ship metals directly to your house. Go to legacypminvestments.com, download the free investor guide, and I have read it. There is so much valuable information there. Friends, now is the time to not roll the dice on your hard-earned money. Find out about the growth potential that is in gold and that gold offers you. Contact Legacy Precious Metals and make sure to tell them that I sent you.
Welcome back to Jenna Ellis Tonight. Over the weekend, Oregon High School State Championship in the girls' 200-meter race was won by a boy again, and he was met with boos this time as he crossed the finish line. Let's play the clip.
Lane 4 is Esther Jones of Roosevelt. Lane 5 is Sophia Castaneda.
Joining me now is Auron MacIntyre. He's the host of the Auron MacIntyre Show, and he is author of The Total State: How Liberal Democracies Become Tyrannies. Auron, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on. And what are your thoughts? It's interesting that in that setting, you hear all of those boos. That's unmistakably clear. Look, the power politics being what they are, you can almost get away with anything, it seems like, but you can't make people agree with it. So they can get a boy to compete in women's sports, but they can't have the acceptance and the adulation and the celebration of the crowd. But what are your thoughts?
No, the response of these parents in this crowd is absolutely necessary. Good on them for having the courage to stand up against this ridiculous show. You can have the emperor out there, you can pretend like his new clothes are amazing, but eventually someone reaches out and says, this is absurd. And more, it's becoming necessary. We're seeing that it's not going to be happening at the federal level or at the government level, unfortunately, in many different states. These schools, these different organizations are going to continue to push this absurd ideology, destroying the idea of men and women, destroying the ability of women to have their own spaces and compete. And it's absolutely essential that people are willing to push back in an organic way. Ultimately, people compete so that they can show that they're the best at something, so they can receive the accolades, the recognition for their accomplishments. But when someone is absolutely cheating like this, violating the spirit, violating truth, and everyone is supposed to parade around as if this is okay, as if this is something worthy of veneration, it is absolutely necessary for people to go ahead and undercut that incentive by showing that they are only going to stand up, they're only going to support, they're only going to cheer for real women who actually compete and win in these sports.
Riley Gaines, former University of Kentucky swimmer, said on Twitter, or actually X, just listen to the audible boos. People are over this. It's about time. So, Auron, do you think that the left has overplayed its hand here? Are people sick of this nonsense? I'll just add, I think Gallup has polled more recently that overall the LGBT movement has been set back largely because of transgenderism. Where do you think the average American stands today?
I think it is encouraging to see this organic pushback. I think this is the first time in a long time that we've really seen people stand up against this. However, I do think this was naturally where this movement was going to go. When you deny the truth, what a man is, what a woman is, what a marriage is, what God's order is about, when you are constantly pushing back and dismantling what is good and beautiful and true, you have to eventually dismantle everything down to the point where you can't even tell the difference between a man and a woman competing against each other. We see these brutal fights between men and women in combat sports. We see the way that women are victimized through this. And really, this is just ultimately the manifestation of a denial that hurt men as well earlier on. We broke down what it meant to be a man, a man's place in society. And now that same force has come for women and destroyed all of their spaces and their dignity as well. It's time for everybody to go ahead and push back against this. It's good to see the beginnings of it, but we need a lot more.
What do you think it's going to take to set this to right in our society? When you think about our culture, you think about the educational system today. I mean, there are a lot of things that are broken and need fixing, but where would you start?
Well, ultimately, it's great to have guys like Ron DeSantis in governorships who are pushing back at that level. When you do have a strong executive who's willing to say no to the Biden administration and push back against their trans agenda, even though it's been put into law or put through executive orders, that's critical when you can do that. But ultimately, we need local organizations and associations that are willing to break away from the federal system and its requirements, usually dictated through funding, in order to create educational systems and sports leagues and other things that are willing to work in the common, understood, original definition of men and women in what it means to be a family, what it means to be a faith member of a community, until we separate and create these parallel organizations that can provide real places for athletic competition and other critical parts of the social fabric. We're going to see the central government in Washington to continue to try to force these things down on the average person.
No, I absolutely agree. So decentralization is one of the key elements to freedom. And certainly freedom of thought, freedom of ideas. One of the things you kind of alluded to earlier were the transcendentals, the good, the beautiful, and the true. It seems as though, when you think about the original project of education, it was moral formation, it was religious formation. That was unmistakably clear in the early days of our educational system in America. It was all about catechesis, and it was about teaching children the tenets of the Christian faith. We've lost all of that, obviously, with secularism. I love what you said too in terms of the natural course of where this has gone with radical feminism. That ultimately it has been about the subjugation of women, ironically enough, in protest. Lots of things in our country need fixing. You mentioned Ron DeSantis down in Florida. Is there any pieces of legislation or other things that you're seeing that say, hey, this needs to happen state by state in order for us to win in education?
Well, I think a huge issue has been the decoupling of funding. Obviously, funding the student and not the system, I think, has been a core push across many states, including Florida. It's very clear that the ability of the federal government to basically steal parents' money and then force it down their children's throats as an indoctrination of state ideology is a horrible thing that we've allowed. It's an institutional bias that has created the ability of the public school to go ahead and steal the moral initiative from every family while also taking their funds that they would normally use to otherwise educate their children.
Yeah.
So I think that if we can go ahead and separate that funding, I think that's a huge step in the right direction.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. Folks, stick around. You don't want to miss this. And welcome back to Jenna Ellis Tonight. I'm joined again by Auron MacIntyre. He's the host of the Auron MacIntyre Show. He's also the author of Total State, How Liberal Democracies Become Tyrannies. Auron, right before we went into the break, you were waxing eloquent on some of the things that need to happen policy-wise in education. I just wanted to get right back into your thoughts there. And then I wanted to talk a little bit more about your book, The Total State, How Liberal Democracies Become Tyrannies. But what were we talking about right before the break?
Just the necessity of going ahead and separating the funding that the state is currently putting into the educational system. Obviously, public schools are one of the core pieces of the indoctrinational mechanism that are used to go ahead and force alternative lifestyles, alternative moral systems onto children right now to go ahead and make them uniformly identify with the state instead of their parents. And so by going ahead and separating the money from the system and instead having it follow the student, we create a scenario where parents can put children in educational situations that they prefer, where their values are being taught and where they're not relying on the state to go ahead and deliver the basic understanding that the kids will use to view the world going forward.
It's one of those things. It's not rocket science, right? It's always follow the money. And whoever has the power of the purse ultimately has that power, right? That's why it was originally vested with Congress. But when you think about children in particular, who's paying taxes? It's their parents. And at the end of the day, who's responsible for their ultimate care, their well-being? It's their parents. And we have turned everything upside down. This whole mantra, it takes a village to raise a child. I mean, this is just leftist nonsense. At the end of the day, the children belong to their parents. And ultimately, in the Christian understanding of things, they belong to God first. And they're stewarded to the parents, who are accountable ultimately to God for their well-being. I want to transition, though, to talking about, the state of freedom in our country. You wrote a book called The Total State, How Liberal Democracies Become Tyrannies. The title is a dead giveaway. They become tyrannies. When you think about the United States today, we are by far the most indebted country in the world, just by total size. We're also the richest in terms of per capita income in the world. What is really interesting, Auron, an economist showed me this recently, and I had no idea, but it blew my mind to discover that the United States government, both in total spend and per capita, is larger than the entire size of the Chinese Communist Party that controls China. So our government is actually bigger. And when you think about all of the things that our founders were about when it came to federalism, when it came to states' rights and state sovereignty, vesting the power with the people. This is completely outrageous to think that our government consumes so much power.
Yeah, I think in the modern understanding, when we look at totalitarian governments, we think of Nazi Germany or Soviet Russia or communist China. We have a very particular idea of gulags, jackboots, a central party that is handing out the way that everyone's going to believe and controlling all elections. And so that makes it difficult for us to look at our current situation and understand it as tyrannical. But after seeing what has happened in 2020, the lockdown and pandemic, like a lot of people, I recognize that the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, separation of powers, all these things I deeply believe in didn't seem to stop tyranny when they were closing the churches, but keeping the strip clubs open, keeping us from going to the funerals of our loved ones while Democrats burned down and rioted in the streets. And it really just became clear to me that there's something else going on here. And so the book is really my intellectual journey as I try to understand how power really works in the United States and how it has grown around the Constitution, using these different organizations and institutions to go ahead and move power outside of those three branches that were created in the Articles of the Constitution and restrained through checks and balances and the other restrictions that the founders created, and instead have assembled a total state, a collection of institutions that manipulate, censor, control information and the flow of power to make sure that even though we don't have any official, Politburo or Joseph Goebbels or someone with centralized power that is dedicated to controlling our narrative, we still always receive the same message, whether it be through public education, like we talked about, academia, the media, the federal government. They're all singing from the same hymn sheet. They're always delivering the same ideology in the total state.
Yeah, I think that is well said. Oftentimes, you have the worst examples. When you think about Stalin, you think about Mao and Hitler, all of those examples in the 20th century. Rod Dreher wrote a book called Live Not by Lies, in which he talks about soft totalitarianism, and we see that today. Where do you think it went awry, though, historically? Where did we kind of get off of the original constitutional project that our founders had put together carefully, and then we went more towards this kind of, administrative state, if you will? Where did that happen?
Well, I think ultimately we made a mistake in asking the Constitution to do something it wasn't supposed to do. The founders were very clear with us what the Constitution was. It's not a magical piece of paper that restricts government for all time. It's an inculcation of the specific way of being, the tradition that we had at the founding of the country. And it's only animated, it only receives its power because the people believe in it, because they hold that tradition, they hold that faith, they hold that identity, and they keep those communities together. It's not the articles of the Constitution, the specific words written on paper that ever restrict the government. It's the people who work together in communities who are self-reliant, who form these natural organic bonds that push back against government power. And I think slowly over time, we forgot that. We lost our identity as Christians, as Americans, and instead we handed over those powers to the state. We could trace it back to many different places. Many people will look at Woodrow Wilson and the introduction of the academic presidency. I think FDR and his creation of the New Deal and the administrative state there is probably a good year zero if you want to look for one where the structure was actually introduced. But the point is that over time, power has been able to centralize because we have lost that idea of regional, cultural unity, that idea that each one of those, the reason we have the federal system is that the founders understood that centralization of power was dangerous and that you wanted to solve political questions at those local levels. But what we've done is we've stripped the power of families and communities to handle those situations, and we've centralized them all in abstract government bureaucracy.
Thank you so much, Auron MacIntyre. The name of the book is The Total State: How Liberal Democracies Become Tyrannies. Thank you so much for joining Jenna Ellis tonight.